All right, well, I'll call the meeting to order at 6:02. And the first item on the agenda is to recognize Chief John True.
Yes, we invited Chief True here this evening for a proper KES thank you. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to make it, but we do have a certificate of service for the chief for his, I think he's been in town 7 years, is that correct? Is that right, 7? And then our kindergarten students made him the cutest happy retirement book ever. And so hopefully he will enjoy their well wishes from kindergarten. So yeah, very cute.
Yeah.
That's great.
Send those off to the chief.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for the kindergarten class for doing that. And thank you, Chief True.
Yeah.
Nice.
Thanks, Becky. All right, so a non-public session can be called at any time in accordance with Chapter 91A, Section 3(2), A, B, C, D, E, or I. And that moves us to public input. Anything from the public?
I just had a question from last week. I didn't know how, what the next steps were, or if there are next steps. And I know
Sure.
you were a new board and everything, so I just wanted to let you know that I'm here and be happy to work with anyone you assign or any guidelines that you want to do. I'd be happy to participate. So I didn't know where it was, so I just didn't want to show up and tell you I'm still willing to do that.
No, perfect. Thanks for that, and thanks for showing up too, Al. We pulled together a little bit of an outline following the last meeting that ties in with policy BDF, which dictates the rules and responsibilities around how we form advisory committees. So what I thought we could do, and this was further on down in the agenda, but I think it makes sense to bring it up and talk about it now. I thought we could go some of the points that I had pulled together in this outline. And I think I can share this with you too, Al, so you can take a look at it.
Great.
But what we can hopefully do together is just go through this, figure out what makes sense for the group, and then determine what the next steps are collectively. So if you start at the top of the page, what I heard you say in the last meeting, Al, was that the overall focus is on looking to lower the cost per student for the longer term.
Correct.
And the data that you showed is, eye-opening, showing the cost rising year over year. So in order to drive that cost down, or at least understand where it's coming from and why, this advisory committee would be a group that could provide input to the board and helping shed light on potential ways to bend the curve, so to speak. So in order to do that, one of the items that I mentioned in the last meeting was that it would be great to understand what those drivers are over the 20 or so years that kind of line in with that historical data. Because obviously, if we're going to make some sort of a recommendation or understand how we can maybe lower the cost or somehow reduce the increases year over year, it's good to know, or we need to know what's driving it. So that is one item that I think is important to understand as we go forward and come up with recommendations. As far as moving down into the advisory committees and the policy, the first item notes that community members are deemed appropriate by the board. So what we thought about, or this is me speaking in a vacuum, so please provide input as we go. But I was thinking 2 families or 2 representatives from families with students at KES would make sense. I would have to go around and probably solicit some input from families. If we collectively agree that's the right approach, but I do think that if we're having this committee, it might be helpful to have input from family members. We mentioned you in here, Al, as a participant. Also, a senior leadership team member from SAU 16, and then at least one school board member. in terms of a group, how does everybody feel about that? Does that seem reasonable?
Does that mean I'm off the hook? I don't see my name on that.
It's not on there, Becky, but if
Yeah,
you want it
it's
to
not on
be.
there right now, but we'll quickly add it. First of all, I thank you so much for this opportunity, because I think the opportunity for us is to understand the past, but really to look forward to the future.
Yep.
And I think that's where we can start to bend the curve and still get the same, quality of education without sacrificing the educational part, not cutting programs. Maybe there's some synergies that we can find, or something we've never thought of. I mean, the board is always addressing problems as they come, right? But maybe if we could have a little bit, a 2-year look ahead that you don't have the capability of doing, that would be helpful to kind of put out some assumptions and bring it back to you and say, these are the assumptions, this is what it looks like. Here's some options that we could consider. And then after we give you those options, you say, or the board says, hey, that one looks like a viable one, or this does. So we're not chasing our tail. Once we get the information, we can digest it and say, okay, where do we go from here?
Yeah. Well, it's my understanding that other schools have budget advisory committees, and it sounds like the goal that they have is similar to what we've been talking about here today and in the last meeting. So I don't know, like in terms of their makeup, Chris,
Sure.
like the people.
Yeah, so there's a couple towns that have municipalities, so they're elected positions where they're
Right.
part of it. So it's a little bit different. It's a lot more formal, and those meetings happen quite a bit. So if I use Brentwood, for example, they have a municipality. Board member sits on it, but they all the budgets get brought to them, town and school. But they meet every Monday, and that's a lot of meetings for there. Some of our smaller towns that do have either they call it a financial advisory committee or a budget advisory committee. It's made up of community members who come in, and it's part of the budgeting process. The one hard thing for education is that we set our budget almost a year and a half in advance, right?
I know.
So that's
Yeah,
how our
very good.
school. So we're trying to project into the future based on need,
Well,
right?
that's what I'm saying, is
Yeah.
for this thing, it would be, my idea would, we would, just bring some geographical information, some information saying, this is where we think it's going to go.
Mhm.
And these are the couple options that are available to us. Which would you want us to go down and chase down? Because it doesn't make any sense unless we're all in agreement on it.
Sure.
I mean, it's not sense to fight it. I mean, we're gonna do this together.
Yeah.
We're not gonna.
So that's sort of how these budget advisory committee work. Like in our budgeting process, we start in the SAU with all of our principals in August, and they start putting a needs-based budget together, and then we look at it multiple times before we bring it to the board. Typically bring it to the board in October, November if it is the latest we'd like to bring it, and that's usually when the budget advisory comes and they hear the budget the first time with the board. Then they'll go back and come to the December meeting with some ideas, recommendations that they've heard as a committee. And again, there's suggestions because the board, once it's approved, becomes the board's budget. So it's a back and forth. So for example, the budget advisory committee say, you're at 5% and it's this much. We really think that the tax base right now would only support a 3%. That's our recommendation. The board can say thank you, or they can say no thank you and then do what they want. But it's a process back and forth of what the town is hearing and then the board taking that into consideration.
Yeah, and I'm thinking a little outside the box too, is almost as many synergies, because like I'm saying, is if we know that East Kingston or Kingston or us, we have this facility available and it's half full, or we have this or that, maybe there's some ideas that, not normally in the budget process, that we could go talk to the other principals and say, hey, what do you have, what's available? We don't know unless we ask, and because everyone's focused on our thing, but maybe if we look at it as if it's a local community thing, we might be able to offset some costs.
Yeah.
And bend the curve and still.
So we do that now with all of our utilities like oil purchasing or electricity if we can get better rates. We do that with anybody in SAU 16. Kingston, not part of SAU 16, so we can't coordinate with them. So those are some of the synergies that we do look at currently. And then there's internal processes based on bidding processes each policy has. But again, another set of eyes or questions, but that is part of the work that we do with all of our schools.
Like I said, we don't know. We just bring the information and you guys say, go with it, or,
So it there's value added to other people looking at it and giving thoughts and giving input. But also you have a timeline, so but I think other people hearing the amount of work that goes into a budget that we start a year and a half in advance is it's a lot. So I'd love to have other inputs that we don't always think about. And then can we do it based on statutes and laws and also contracts that we're bound to?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if that helps out or if that makes it muddier for you, Josh.
There's always obstacles.
That's right.
Like I say, to us, it's just,
Yeah.
we don't know yet. We're gonna give the information to you, and you're gonna say, hey, these are some ideas that people came up with, maybe we could do this, and maybe there's statutory reasons we can't.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So going back to the group, do we feel like there's enough representatives here? Do we need more? Do we need less?
With the five you have.
Yeah.
Because Chris, you had said you thought five was like the.
5 or 6, I mean, I think
Okay.
you definitely need at least Becky as part of it. You know, I mean, she brings the budget, she knows the historical part to it. I mean, the principal's, really important to the budgeting process. Because she does meet with all of her teachers to talk about needs in the building.
It's just, it doesn't, so it'd be like 3 people from town essentially. And I get a group, if you have too many, it becomes unwieldy. That's probably the thinking. And also getting people to volunteer is hard. 3 people from town just doesn't seem like a wide enough.
More.
But
Sheldon uses 3, and
Yeah.
Fields would use 3, but they usually only get 1.
yeah, no, people don't want to do things.
Yeah.
How about the best way to solicit that input? Do you know what Stratum or what Newfields use?
Yeah, so Stratum, the town manager, will ask for anybody that's interested, and then he'll appoint someone to be their FAC, they're called the financial. In Newfields, we put out from the board, anybody that's interested to write a letter to the superintendent or designee, whoever's over that town. I can tell you the 5 years I did it, I got nobody wrote in. And every year anybody like to be part of this process? And so at one meeting, I may have said, thank you for volunteering. And that's how we got someone to be part of that committee. Because they would be at every budget meeting. And I said, could you be part of this process? So
Yeah, it would be great if someone had an accounting background, that would be great.
there you go.
It was the 3 people in the room, and 2 of the 3 people are then we're on the board.
Oh,
So,
well, this seems like it's a smaller time commitment than.
Yeah.
So the only other thing that I put out to Josh, and you can go through it, is if it's assigned as an ad hoc by the board, that is an official board committee, and you need to post minutes, and you need to have an agenda, and then you have to have 30 minutes in duration, you have to have public comment. Or what we did with like the school study, he could commission it and it could be school-based where it doesn't have to have formal minutes. Still be reports, and if there's a board member on that, they'd come and report out, we'd have it part of the agenda. But then it's not official minutes, so you're able to meet without, as many stipulations. You still have your meetings, still have it, but, so that would be something.
Choose between those
You
2?
certainly can. You could commission us, the SAU, because I work for y'all,
Sure.
to be part of this study, and then we could solicit, anybody that might be interested, knowing Al's already interested, but 2 other community members. So Becky, we could send something out, putting together a school-based budget committee. Here's the goal. Here's what we're looking at doing, and would you be interested? Send us your names. And then from the SAU, I would probably ask Molly, since she has the best idea of budgeting, to be part of this process,
Yeah, sure.
to work through this.
And then if we didn't get anyone who's interested, like would that tell us that maybe there wasn't interest in this?
I think the problem is this is the challenge for everything. I coach high school hockey, I coach kids my whole life, and it's the same people who show up, and the same people who don't.
Yeah.
Because they don't see a need, they don't understand the need, they don't, we don't have community newspapers really anymore like we used to, where people would read what was going on. Now, if you're on this online, you're on that thing or that thing, and nothing is local and community. So that's the biggest challenge we have, is getting people to understand that we have a problem, and it's our job to help try to fix it as citizens, I agree with you, it always ends up being the same people. Yeah, challenge.
Chris, if we go that alternate route that you mentioned, does that mean we still have to tick and tie to policy BDF? or
You
is
don't,
that-
if you're commissioning us to have a school base, then we
Okay.
could have other committee members, and Becky would be in charge of that school base, and with the
Okay.
coordination with our office.
Okay, and then what about report outs?
Yeah, we could put it on the agenda like we do with the school task force study.
Okay.
So if we do have one board member, like say it's you, Josh, that's serving on this,
Yep.
each month, we'd have an agenda item and you'd give a report, here's where we're at, here's some of the recommendations we had
Okay.
from that committee.
Okay. All right. I mean, comparing the two options, that definitely sounds much more appealing.
It gives you more flexibility to set up meeting times and not be as official and, you know, again, the 30 minutes of public input, you're bound by that time.
Yeah.
So,
So if we decide to do this and put it out there and say we're soliciting people to serve on this committee and we don't hear from anyone, would the next step be to we don't do it or we?
or you could start with the committee members that are there, you know,
Okay.
Molly, Al, and Becky, just start
Okay.
meeting and hear some ideas. And then if other people want to come up, you know, again, we could solicit that interest anytime, you know.
Yeah. I mean, to me, I think all the same questions would be out there.
Sure.
It's just we might lose a little bit of the community involvement aspect to have somebody that has skin in the game, so to
Yeah.
speak, with a child at school.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
And
just
I
one
think if they
input.
really understood the numbers and said, hey, here's where we're at, and we know that it's not sustainable long term, and at some point if we run out of other people's money, but so what can we do now, we're asking you to get involved now to help us still produce, you know, the best product in education possible, in public education, but help us to see into the future how we might be able to find these helpful things to make things more efficient, or, I think if the people know that we're doing this, at least it's a proactive event,
Yeah.
right? Rather than saying your taxes in or whatever.
yeah, it makes the conversation at the end of the year easier, knowing that there was even more focus on budget numbers when compared to the past couple of years or so.
Exactly.
Okay. So Chris, how would I refer to that in
Yep,
terms of
so
a
you
motion?
could make a motion for the SAU to commission a school-based budget advisory committee that would report out to the board with the mission of looking at the budgeting process.
Okay.
And if there's ways for efficiencies or savings or other recommendations that come through that. So
Okay.
then we have the purpose, and then we could use your outline of how we would start for membership.
Okay. All right. So I will make a motion to have the SAU commission a school board budget advisory committee with a goal on reviewing the individual budget cost per student and identifying any potential efficiencies or cost benefits for the upcoming budget year.
I'll second.
Do we need to vote on this?
You do, yeah.
Aye.
Perfect, thank you. All right, well, we will work on that.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Great. Thanks. All right. Any additional public input? Okay. All right, so the next item on the agenda is the approval of the meeting minutes from March 13th.
We don't have
Okay.
I always do. Under number 3, public init, Mr. Brandano's last name wasn't included in the minutes. It said unidentified, so we want to add Al Brandano's name to the minutes.
Oh, yeah.
And then on under 6.2 manifests and financials, we were talking about the summer programming, and I indicated I believed it was covered by the regular budget, not by the grant, so I should say taking out grant, and I believed it was covered by the regular budget, so that was something Molly and I were following up on. And then the next paragraph, the boiler repair was identified, it wasn't the rooftop unit. It was just the boiler. The boiler and the rooftop did both not go Haywire was just the
These
plan.
are different things.
That would have been a much more expensive fix.
But I didn't have any comments myself. Alright, so I will make a motion to approve meeting minutes of the March 13th meeting as amended.
Second?
Alright, all in favor? Aye. Alright, so that brings us down to committee reports. There are 4 new policies this time around. Just give a little bit of input, tag that onto the summary page here, but the first one, academic honesty and integrity. This one, like the others, is brand new. There is a focus on artificial intelligence. So you'll recognize that within the procedure. There's essentially a list of 10 items that are considered prohibitive behavior. Some of the call-outs there are cheating, plagiarism, improper use of AI, etc. Generally speaking, when it comes to alternative or artificial intelligence, the policy leaves the decision up to the teachers in how to apply the guidelines to students, essentially what you should or shouldn't do. I don't know that this would be too much of an issue here in KES, but it is interesting seeing the policy come down, especially with all of the talk about it in the news, et cetera.
Yeah,
Um,
that's nice.
And then in the discussion, there was talk of, whether or not it should be an outright ban or whether or not it should be kept. And obviously, there's some positive benefits to keeping it. And when the memo here was prepared, I thought it was funny because it talked about it being a positive tool for teachers and students. And when you look at the policy brief that I know not everybody has access to, but the case law was summarized using ChatGPT in the very next section, so I thought that was kind of funny. So the second policy, school and student publications.
Sorry, guys. It's okay. I had 2 meetings.
Relatively short overall. It mentions that the superintendent will establish guidelines and protocols to regulate official district social media. Sorry, did I just skip to the next one? Yeah, I skipped that. Sorry, I skipped to the next one. Yeah, this one's just focused on school and student publications. Relatively straightforward. The next policy is the one that focuses in on social media websites for the school district. And the superintendent has the ultimate responsibility. It's then delegated down to the principal. And one of the interesting discussion points here is that there is discretion around comments and the fact that the principal or designee is able to remove them if they do not follow the guidelines listed within the procedures. And then finally, website publishing essentially provides some guidelines to consider when publishing anything to school district websites. The last 3 have the connection into kind of technology and AI focus, but I don't think there's anything too controversial here. A lot of it's just providing guidelines that we should follow.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments? Okay. So I will make a motion to approve, to approve policy IKL, academic honesty and integrity, policy JICE, school and student publications, policy KD, school district social media websites, and policy KDC, website publishing. Do a second.
Second.
And I can vote because I read them all.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you.
All right. Cheryl, you're next up to talk about safety and security.
We're safe, but we didn't have a meeting.
Yeah, okay.
But
All right,
there's
good.
a nice sponge in the door out there, so I feel like we're very safe right now.
All right. Staff superintendent evaluation committee.
We'll talk about it later, but we didn't have an April meeting, so our next meeting is in May to go over the evaluation that we're going to do.
Okay. All right. And then Kensington school study update.
It's still on hiatus.
Okay. General correspondence.
I did not have any.
Okay.
Any general correspondence, Steve?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
Community engagement.
That one's on hiatus as well since the survey's done.
All right. Community news submission has my name tag.
So I sent it
Yeah. Okay. All right.
in.
Perfect.
It'll go in the next one, and then maybe,
And that's about the communications.
well, it's like, it was like about our plans for the year.
Oh,
So it's
okay.
sort of like, these are things we did do instead of we didn't what we did. But
Okay.
next year we can try to do it earlier so that it's a little bit more.
Got
And I asked her for the deadlines, so
it. So we have those. All right. Perfect.
so we'll know which one we want it to be in. And
Yeah. Okay.
so yeah, that'll go in the June.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
Sure.
All right, Molly, over to you to talk about business and financials.
Great, what do you think? Pleasant offer, I'll be kind of piece of topic. Then also to follow up, Becky, on the things, so what that was is, when all the summer stuff got paid, it was to a billable line rather than to a grant or the operating budget. So it was just moving it to the operating budget where it should have been. And a lot of it had to do with kindergarten and, it was partially operating budget, some of the stuff that might have been triggered. A lot of it was the kindergarten camp and then summer work in the summer. It was just
Okay,
sitting
so
there.
kindergarten camp was paid by a grant, ESY was out of the operating budget.
Yes, so,
Yeah.
but all of that got charged to a billable line on the
Okay.
balance sheet, and it was just us moving it to the correct spot.
Okay.
Then I did bring the manifest, they're up there somewhere to be signed, if you guys wanna do that, great. And then since last month, we did have a decrease in expense, a big part of it is the food service loss. Like 2 months ago, I had increased that, but we were realizing that in our calculation, the prior positive fund balance that we have wasn't being taken into consideration on the Excel spreadsheet, so I decreased that down. Other than that, we just had some expenses, related to operations of the ground services that we do. We did, at this time of year, take a look at all the hourly positions and take a look to see where they're at right now and say how many maybe left in the school year to make sure it's necessary. But there, other than that, wasn't much change. Did anyone have any questions? That's all I have.
Thanks,
And the
Molly.
DRA report's all approved for the
Perfect. What about any more follow-up items that we need to talk about from the audit report last time around, like,
I don't think so.
okay,
We were just talking about, review of bank reconciliations. We've been super involved in the software conversion in our office, so I, intend to look at those next week.
okay.
Our first 2 payrolls last 2 weeks.
We did talk about one of the recommendations that Pam made about just making sure Molly or Michelle initialed all of it. Yeah, so just want to say that that is now occurring, so before anything comes, making sure that anything's not missing for a length of time, that Molly and Michelle can pinpoint that, get to it sooner.
Okay,
Yeah, it's actually on my chair from the other
Yeah.
day.
awesome. Okay, thanks, Molly, appreciate it. All right, Becky, principals report?
Yes. So what do we wanna do first? I have a lot, I feel like I have a lot of papers over here this week. My report.
Yeah. Give you
I got
that.
So under positive community culture, I wrote about our community time last week, which was Career Day, and we were fortunate to be joined by a handful of parents and other relatives who came in last week to share their professions with the students, and we had a nice variety of different professions for our kids to hear from. I listed a few of them. We had a labor and delivery nurse and fish and game warden and a pilot and, just all kinds of different things. And the kids were really interested in that. It's already something that they're talking about doing again next year. So it was really fun for us, and it's always great for parents to be able to come in and share what they do with the kids. Because sometimes when you ask the kids, what does mommy and daddy do? I don't know what they do. So it was a good afternoon for them. And then Mrs. Eskelin is following up in guidance lessons with them, just kind of, having them think about what your passions are and what you like and what you might be able to do with that. So just starting that career thinking. Under meaningful learning, if anybody wants to take a field trip down to first grade, the chicks are hatching. They started, the first one picked on Eclipse Day, which was very unexpected. That was a couple days early, so we were thinking the eclipse had something to do with the early pick maybe. But the kids are there really wasn't a lot of learning that happened in first grade today because they just sort of hatched all day long and they had the camera set up and they could watch it up on the big screen. And but I can't really think of anything that's more meaningful than just like actually watching the chicks hatch. And then they've been learning about life cycles and handling them and all of that. And now they're gonna have them in their classroom for the next week or so before they head off to a local farm here in Kensington to live. So that's just been really exciting. You just walk by and hear a little chirp, chirp, chirp. And then under health and well-being, our third graders, and Shannon can pipe in if she wants, have been trying to educate the rest of our school on decreasing the amount of food waste that we're seeing in the cafeteria. And they sort of set up camp in during the lunch times and sat right at the buckets while kids were dumping trays and having them sort trash and food and then measuring trash and weighing food and really trying to bring our awareness to how much food that we're wasting. And then they were able to have a good conversation with Ms. Plord about why certain things, again, have to be on the trays that seem to be not eaten as much, but those requirements of the food service, which we talked a little bit about last time. There's posters around the room that you've seen, or around the school, about food waste, and then they're in the process right now of creating scripts and videos to, again, promote sort of less waste and healthier eating and that sort of thing. So they've learned a lot in this project, which is a lot of fun. What am I going to next? I know I have a lot else to do.
Staff growth?
Staff growth? Okay.
Yeah.
So I've created a list of some of the
Thank you.
professional development that teachers have participated in this year. Some of this professional development is required either by a school board policy, by the Department of Education, or from an RSA requirement. So that's that first group. CPR and first aid, it is a requirement in the school board policy that there is someone trained in CPR and first aid at any school event. So if you go on a field trip, or if you're at the Follies, or if you're at a track meet, or any school event has to have at least one staff member certified in CPR and first aid. So as a whole staff, we do that every 2 years. Suicide awareness training is an RSA requirement. There's 2 hours of required suicide awareness training each year. Universal precautions, that's usually done with Nurse Heather. That's also required annually, and new this year was a shift in the Department of Ed of preschool outcomes measurement, and so that was also required training for our preschool coordinator. We also have other required trainings from the SAU that might be insurance driven, like Primex, preventing workplace harassment, that sort of thing. So more trainings that are required for our teachers from the SAU. And then the last list are things that are more related to their personal professional goals and or our building goals. So these are more ones that teachers are selecting to go to themselves throughout the year. So there's a wide variety of different things that our teachers participate in: math, reading, science of reading, coaching, SEL, STEM outreach. So again, it really just depends on their personal goals, and then selecting the PD that they go to.
Are there any target goals that you might put out, Becky? Like teachers should take 2 trainings a year or something like that?
Not number of trainings. The Orton Gillingham training was one that almost all of our classroom teachers did either last summer or this fall. It's a pretty intensive 40 hours of training. So even though that's one training, it was 40 hours. So there's not a requirement necessarily for number of trainings. And it really also just depends on what their goals are.
And just to give you an update, we no longer are an hour-based system. So when people get recertified, it used to be 75 hours. We're a portfolio. So anybody that's in their 3-year process, someone from the central office will come and we have about a half-hour conversation. And the certification, they talk about how they've grown as a teacher and how it relates to teaching and growing their students. So a lot of the trainings they take will be meeting that specific goal they've set with Ms. Rule. And they'll demonstrate, and what they do during that 30 minutes is mind-blowing with the amount of stuff that they're creating and doing to demonstrate that. So that's really powerful. So all of these things you see relate to them getting recertified at that 3-year process.
Okay. Great. Well, thanks for sharing this, Becky. It's nice to see.
Calendar's later.
Calendar next.
It's next session, so you can hold off on that one. Yep.
All right, so on to new business, general assurances is
Yep.
the first item.
So Josh, you get the pleasure of signing off on these. First page is just your initials down at the bottom. Second one you have to sign and date it and put your initials down. The general assurances are that each year we'll take the federal money that is given to us and that we'll use it accordingly based on the guidelines put by federal and state law. And that we'll have accounting systems and that what we say that we'll purchase that we have to. So that's our accountability piece with both the state and federal government and for any grant money that we receive.
All right, and then the next item, certified staff list renewal.
Yep, so that would be something I'd want to go into non-public with you all under letter C to talk about the certified staff list, and then we come back out and we'd make our recommendation after that.
Good. And superintendent goals?
Yes, so I'll pass this out to you all. Here's just a worksheet to follow along. Thank you to Mr. Murray for putting this together. And I'm just going to give you kind of what Dr. Asbell has been working on this year so that you can have that. You do have a copy of it in your packet, so I'm not going to read each individual metric that she used, but just give you a kind of an idea of what she's been working on through this year based on her goals. So goal number 1 was to develop and implement a vision summit. 2 weeks ago, we held a vision summit. We had about 80 people from across the community that came in, gave us over 2 hours of input on our vision of a graduate and what was missing and how we could bring in some characteristics and skills from the vision statement we had for diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice. She updated today and sent back some language that got crafted to that stakeholder group again. Once that group has kind of gone through another vetting process, we'll bring it to schools and to students at the middle school and high school for a further vetting before that goes out. So it's in process. Hopefully be finalized by June. Any questions on the Vision Summit? Okay. Goal 2 was to actively create a culture of open collaboration, communication with students, staff, and parents, as well as community members. So we set up the goal through all of central office to meet with board members on a rotating schedule throughout the month, trying just to get to a chance to not just be all business, but to get to know each other and know the goals of each board. That's gone pretty well. We've been able to meet either Zoom, in person, so that's been ongoing. Culture and climate survey went out to stakeholders both at the co-op and through the SAU to talk about how we're communicating as an SAU, what are we missing, and I know that the committee will be doing a report out, I believe, on Monday, right, at the joint board meeting, Stephanie? Yeah, so that I think will be finalized there. We made a goal to look at all the school calendars to make sure that we're hitting major events and not just Dr. Asbell, because that would be difficult to meet all, and not just sporting events, but other types of events that kids are at. School plays, concerts. So we've been tracking that, looking at that as a goal. We've been also, Dr. Asbell's been meeting with the different union leadership on a quarterly basis. So just talking about, are there situations that are coming up or arising, or what could we do better? And so that we're not having major grievances or issues that are arising in our school, that we can head it off before they happen. So that has been different than years past, and bringing union into what we do within the schools.
Is that just the teachers union?
Yep.
Chris?
So it would be the leadership from each one of our schools. She's been meeting with them on a quarterly basis.
Okay. Okay.
Dr. Asbell has had multiple feedback sessions with different communities. At least an hour of hearing how she's been doing, how our goals have been going, getting feedback on what the communities would like to see as we continue to get further in the year, and goals for previous years or upcoming years. And then the final goal or metric in here was just Dr. Asbell's been going to the Rotary to try to create more business partners for not only the Exeter region, but all of our region, and how we can create more school related business partners in our community. So that has been something that's been ongoing. Any questions about that communication or that collaborative approach? Okay, I'll move to goal number 3, which is to outline a process to develop an SAU strategic plan, which will include high levels of engagement for all stakeholders. So as you remember, we presented options to the Joint Board back in October about getting money secured to run that strategic plan, and then look at different companies to do it with. Dr. Asbell and myself will be meeting with Qualtrics in May to start looking at the process so that we can really start that as we start school in August. So we'll have another presentation to you of what that strategic plan will look like and how we're going to engage stakeholders. So there'll be some things that we'll do just within our own school communities through Zoom with Qualtrics. And then there'll be a couple of in-person sessions where we'll bring any stakeholders that want to come in and do collaborative conversations about what are our goals as a SAU that we're looking at.
And Chris, is Qualtrics like an audit firm?
Qualtrics is a data analysis firm. So they do a lot of this. They're really good at creating and getting feedback. So anytime you have like SAT prompt questions, they're a company that helps write them. They work a lot with colleges on teacher student satisfactions and things of that nature. So they work with a group called Isobar that really does strategic planning and looking at survey and different questions. So we'll take the communications audit, we'll take the vision summit, and then that will help them build what questions should we be asking when we're looking at the strategic plan.
Got it.
Any other questions on the strategic plan? Okay. Then goal 4 was to build leadership capacity through appreciative coaching for all of our administrators, and to lead support change through a multi-tiered system of support, both academically and behaviorally. So we have been doing we've been talking about student data in all of our different boards, whether academic or behavioral. Again, you got one today on staff growth, but we've heard a lot about SEL work, how our guidance is supported. We've heard a lot on academic and our tiered instruction. I know Ms. Rule last month was on special education. So those all fit into the MTSS in one capacity or another. And we're also something that we talk about monthly at our administrative meetings, which include all 43 administrators across the SAU. There's ongoing coaching in all of our schools. So Dr. Bennett has the special ed directors. Dr. Asbell has all the principals, and I coach all of the assistant principals, not just in MTSS, but overall coaching and how do we support the work that's going on in the schools. And then finally, just again, our work that we do on those monthly basis in the different meetings, taking topics that can be spread across all of our schools with our administrators, so that we're having some common approaches to what we're doing and how we're providing experiences for kids across all of our schools. Any questions about goal number 4? Okay. And then finally, goal number 5 is in partnership with others, build and contribute to policy structures and strategies that foster cultural competence and sustained commitment to equity. You saw on that staff growth, we did the implicit bias training. The board also was privy to that implicit bias training. our March day, each school had an equity audit or a pulse check. How is equity happening in your schools? And I know Ms. Rule has or will further that up with staff once the results are finalized. And the DIJ chairs that help work with Mr. Mejia on looking at that. We've been really looking at reviewing all the incident datas in Alma. And what are those incidents? Where are they happening? Why are they happening? In what categories? Are they bias? Are they discrimination? Are they hate? So that's been something that we've been reviewing. The Anti-Discrimination Task Force, which Ms. Asbell sits on, has obviously wrote the discrimination policy and the protocol for that. And that has been presented to all of the boards and have been approved. And they continue to look at different ways that we can continue to report and get better at discrimination and for staff to students and vice versa. And then finally, just continuously bringing policies to you that affect our schools, our staff and students. So that is really the roadmap that Dr. Asbell has been working on throughout the year. And this is for you to help you to provide any input that you want once you go into non-public as well, because you'll have to finalize that today.
Okay.
Any other questions I can provide for you on those superintendent goals and updates? Oh, great.
All right, thanks, Chris.
Yep.
All right, school calendar approval.
Sure.
Yes, for next year.
We're going to do two. We're going to do next year, and then we want to talk about an end of the year date for this year as well.
Okay.
Okay.
This might be the hardest task that we did. I don't know why counting days on a calendar is so difficult, but it was a little mind-boggling. But I think we got it right this time. So this would propose that new staff returns to school on Tuesday, August 20th, and the remaining staff of the certified staff would come back on Wednesday, August 21st. And then the last day of school for students would be Thursday, June 12th, and the last day for staff would be Friday, June 13th. So this is similar to the calendar we had this year, in which we've eliminated all early release days, so those are no longer present, and I've heard nothing but positive things about no longer having early release days, so I think that's probably here to stay. And because the winter break is so long in December, and the 20th, that Friday, falls quite a bit before the actual holiday, we also didn't feel like there needed to be an early release day there either. So I think historically we've done one just because people are really starting to travel, but that's 5 days before the Christmas holiday, and didn't feel like it was necessary this year. So
Makes sense.
Also in this, I know you worked with the other elementary principals to find 4 common days that are consistent across all of our elementary schools so that we can do shared PD.
yeah, we did do that this
Right.
year as well.
And then you see one in September, that is the New Hampshire primary, and voting happens here. So that's why you'll see some different days.
It's
So
an unusual one. Yeah. But otherwise, it's pretty much the voting days. And we did try to tag some of the long weekends like we did this year with Martin Luther King Jr. weekend and Columbus Day weekend.
Okay.
Which again, we heard positive things from families of doing that versus all the early releases. So.
Yeah, it looks good to me too.
we will need a formal motion to approve the 2024-2025 school calendar as presented.
Motion to approve 24-25 school calendar as presented.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Go ahead. As a side note, if you didn't notice, it's 2 full weeks of Christmas, so book your cruises now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you on that. That's very, very helpful.
So for the end of this school year, we were looking at our no heat day and trying to figure out how we're going to think about this both from students ending their school year and also staff fulfilling their contracted days. What I would like to propose, because the staff has an additional work day after the students leave, as required by their contract anyway, plus we have this additional no heat day so the staff have 2 additional days that they're required after the students leave, which we will do with that. What I'd like to propose that the school board accept is that students will have met their minimum minutes of school by the time that we hit the end of the year. So students are required 945. And our students, based on the length of our school day, would generally have, or this year will have had 1,124.5 hours. So we're several hundred above where we need to be. So even if you subtract the additional hours, we're at 1,118. So we're well beyond the required 945 minimum. Which would mean, so what that does then, it would allow our students to have the last day of school be on the same last day as the rest of the SAU.
Yes. Which would be June 13th at this
So
point.
it'd be Thursday, June 13th, and our kids would get out on the same day as everybody else in the SAU.
And this is all this year?
For this year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so they're gonna meet the hourly requirement.
They're-
They're gonna get out
we
the
are-
same day everybody else
Yes,
would.
we well exceed the hourly.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
Because the length of our school day is longer than a lot of the other schools.
The other part why this is so important is that we are having a summer institute the following week on Monday and Tuesday, and you have
We have 13 teachers already signed up for that, so, and I'd like them all to go.
Yeah.
So they still have their 2 additional days to do after the kids leave. So one of those days will be on that Friday, and then the teachers will still have another discretionary day that I will have to sign off on with their union signing off. But they
Yeah.
still have one more day.
I thought it was number of days and that was the requirement. I didn't realize there was
You
hours.
could do-
for teachers there is, because that's how their contract goes. For students, it's hourly based. You can do
Okay.
hours or you can do days.
Okay.
Yeah, and we do hours because we do many more hours than are required by the state.
Okay.
You know, I think 200 hours or close to that. Right?
Yeah, so
Got it.
it's 945 required, and we do over 1,100 at Kensington.
Okay. Wow, okay. Oh, well,
That's great. Yeah,
so,
ending on the same day as the other schools.
yeah.
We have to take a motion on
Yeah,
that.
we do. Yeah.
Motion to approve that we get out on the same day as all of the other schools in the SAU, even though we know that's a lot of valuable hours on that last day of school in June. Having been a 35-year teacher, is it,
It is a full day for us.
yeah. Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Thank you very much. And then the last thing we had under there is just we did not get the school clerk position filled. I know that's a hot topic one. Usually we have multiple people. Cheryl, you're looking at me a little funny.
Well, if I had known that was gonna be open, maybe I wouldn't have run for school board.
I should have
I
told
don't
you.
know.
However, I just want to put it out there publicly, and that we'll probably do a broadcast that the position is open. We'd love to fill it ahead of time. We've been lucky that Molly the last 2 years has filled in, but that's not really best practices. You know, she can because by law she's a resident and she can be here. However, she's also doing double duty as representing us from the SAU office and where we're doing our deliberative session and voting. So I want to put it out there. If someone could do it, it's not a large commitment. It would be taking the minutes at the deliberative session and then being there on the voting day to certify that when everything comes in. So that's the 2 big lifts. So if you know someone, please send them our way so that we can bring them and swear them in. Because the people that had been written in declined the position. So I put it out there publicly, and if you know other people, send them our way.
Is it really that one?
It
day?
is literally like that is their big pick. Like keeping minutes, and we can help them with that. I can give them a template and certifying once voting happens.
And you have to draft,
Okay.
you have to work with the town to draft the ballot
Okay.
and order the ballots.
We've helped out with that a million times too.
One event.
The only is it the clerk that does the collecting of the people running their school board?
No, it could be town offices or whatever, not typically the clerk. So we can look at that and we can assist on that. It's different in different towns, so I'd have to look at exactly how it is. But not a lot.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Old business we already covered. People related matters,
Do not have any?
personnel.
Nothing?
All right. So I think that puts us then back to non-public. Is that right?
That would be us going into non-public.
Okay.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Just need a formal motion to go into non-public.
Motion to go into non-public under what are we going?
Letter C.
Letter C.
A second.
Oh, where's it? Aye.
I will make a motion to approve the certified staff list for. Let's just keep it at that.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Good.
And then adjourning,
And
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn second.
and it's, what do we got?
7:46.